Welcome back to where we try to pick the greatest All Black 15 here on The Breakdown. Last week, the expert panel of myself, Ken Laban, Ricky Swinell and Phil Gifford looked at the front row. We picked Steve McDowell at loosehead, Sean Fitzpatrick at hooker and Ken Gray as our tight head prop. We asked you to vote and you went with Tony Woodcock, Kevin Mialamu and Owen Frank. So two completely different front rows there. So to break the impasse, we've asked Sir Graham Henry to step in as convener of selectors with Ted's team.
And you volunteered very quickly for this job, I hear. You volunteered very quickly, and this is not an easy job. The public vote versus the history of the game, tough job, but you were happy to oblige?
I got my arm twisted. It took them about a month to convince me to
Oh, stop it.
be controversial. Look, I think this is a very difficult job to pick a team after 120 years. I'm older than you guys, so I know more. That's obvious. The only guy who knows about the same as Nisbo, who's probably about 5 years younger than me, so I know more than he does. Ken Gray, obviously, tight head prop.
Well, let's start the other side.
Okay.
You start at one, don't you? You named him many teams. Let's start at one. Let's start at loosehead prop.
Well, you're in charge of this show.
Well, the way you were running, you kept going and you were starting. You thought you were in charge. Apparently, it's my show.
Okay,
Come on now.
Okay, fine.
All right.
I'll play the game.
You'll play the game. All right. Well, let's start at one. Who's your loosehead prop?
Tony Woodcock.
And why?
Well, he played in 2 Rugby World Cup winning teams. He's played 111 games for the All Blacks. He was a vital part of those teams. He's played more games of rugby than any other front rower in the history of this country. And he was superb. So it was a hell of a difficult job. But he's the most experienced, played the most number of tests. And I think he deserved to get the job because of that.
Well, let's move to hooker then, and controversial in some ways because Kevin Mialamu is right over there, but he's right here. He's joining us a little bit later on, but you've had to make a difficult choice. We've had some fantastic hookers. Which way did you go?
Well, Kevy did come into consideration. I had sleepless nights about this, but I had to go with Sean Fitzpatrick.
He wasn't bad. He wasn't bad. Come on now.
Kevy played 129 games for the All Blacks, I think. That's a guess, but I think it's around that. Sean played 92, and Sean was captain for a long, long time. And he put this, he, I think, was the strong man in the front row in world rugby for almost a decade. And I think if you ask the world to pick the best hooker in the world, they'd pick Fitzpatrick.
And so if you think tight head prop, and you've already announced that because you jumped the gun, but Ken Gray, you're going back a while here, you talk about your experience, but what separated him from the great tight heads we've had?
Well, he played in the 60s, and I talked to Colin Meads, Brian Lahore, John Graham, Wilson Winneray, reasonably knowledgeable men, and they thought this man was the strong man of the pack, and he led them. He was only 6'3", reasonably tall for a prop, but only 97 kilos. You know, we're going back a few years. I saw him play. No, he was a phenomenal player in those days, and it's just difficult to compare the different decades and the different teams, but they thought he was a key member of that team, the cornerstone, tight head prop, Ken Gray.
So let's have a look now at those 3 players, those wonderful and great All Black front rowers.
To play 100 tests for the All Blacks is not an easy thing to do. And to play it in the front row, again, makes it even harder. So he again has earned the right to be called a great All Black.
Props are a person that's willing to do their job, and it's quite a selfless job. You know, it's not someone that will get that recognition for scoring tries. Usually they're guys that are willing to set a good platform for a team.
Woody kept things pretty simple, but just did his role, as I say, consistently well. You know, you knew when he was in there and as a scrum, you weren't going to go backwards. He was always ready to go. He didn't really have an off day, which was always great. He was smart in terms of understanding how he could contribute to the team to get it spot on. Like he was never caught short, not knowing where he needed to be, what he needed to do to fit in with the team. He was a real a rock in the team that you really, as I say, it comes down to the people you really trust and rely on when the big moments come, and he was certainly one that delivered on those moments.
But not only was he a power scrummager, he was a good ball player too. And during that time it allowed us to have more attacking threats on the park, because we had a guy who shouldn't be able to catch and pass and run with the ball in our attacking system. And for a long time that was one of our big advantages, having props that could do that.
Here's Woodcock, we've seen it before in the World Cup final.
He just was a farm boy in a really famous team, and he just acted like he didn't change who he was. He was a 100-test All Black, like he's a legend. He's regarded as one of the best props ever. I love the way he was so chilled, very humble, very loving and giving, and then get him on a scrum, he'd just destroy whoever was in front of him.
An arrogant, pimply-faced carpenter's apprentice is how I would probably express my view on Fitzy.
Well, Fitzy was part of an Auckland group that I think misunderstood their role in New Zealand rugby and thought they were perhaps a bit more important than they really were.
A close friend today. He was quite different in those days. He was very confident. He was playing in a varsity team that was pretty laden with experience, and he needed to learn the ropes, and he did. He had issues. He couldn't throw the ball in when he first came into rugby. He had a tendency to give away a lot of penalties for over-vigorous play. I've got to say he became the greatest line-out thrower probably in the game, ultimately, through a lot of coaching and people sorting him out and helping him, but he went through some hard times to get there. I don't think we ever quite got on top of the over-vigorous play, but fantastic All Black, fantastic player, fantastic person.
Well, I think often when you talk about greats, they do change the game, and I think Fitzy changed the game.
But Fitzy was a bit special. I always used to say he's got a backbone of stainless steel. He was unbendable. Yes, he's one of the great All Blacks that would have done well in any era of rugby. He would have been simply outstanding. And add to that, he was a great leader of men.
Just a silent assassin as well, First guy to actually start trying to manipulate refs, with a smile on his face.
Well, see, I think Ken Gray's probably the greatest prop that's played the game, because I think he had a mobility, he had a skill set, he could catch the ball, he was a fantastic line-out player, he was a very good scrummager, and he was very mobile. The difficulty with comparing players from era to era is that the games are very different and the skill sets are very different, but there are some players who transcend the game. Ken Gray, to me, would be a modern-day prop. Mobility, skill, absolute commitment and focus. A wonderful, wonderful player.
I was really fortunate to coach Tony Woodcock Mills. You played a lot of games with the man. I mean, I marvelled with his ability defensively. He looked as though he could fill any spot in the field, made good decisions. What made him special as a player for you?
Oh, he was an intelligent man. He didn't say much, but he did his role exceptionally well. And I came through the grades with him. Secondary schools, under-19s, right through until the All Black stuff, and what he did in terms of his core role and skills. And I think John Hart touched on it before. It's hard to actually, to pick a team, because eras are so different. The scrums became a little bit different, the physique of it. But I suppose for me, Ted, when you're looking at stuff like this, and Kiwi's obviously in the room, you spoke about leadership and things. When you break it down, what are the priorities you look for? Is it leadership, on the field, off the field, or is it, getting out there and making sure that they do their job first and foremost?
I think Richie McCaw handled it, said it. He just did his job, you could always rely on him. You're confident he would do the business for you. And that's what Tony did. 111 test matches. Everybody could rely on him.
And that's what's going to get challenging, Hannah, when you start going through. There's going to be so many other positions. Is there a position for you start thinking to yourself, you know what, how are you going to separate some of these players?
Sitting on this panel, I'm not looking forward to the outside back chat.
Well, JK's not even here.
Yeah.
Wait till he starts voting for himself.
Yeah, correct.
And gets his way. But that's one of the challenges, isn't it? Is being able to separate through the eras.
Yeah,
Well,
that's...
you look at the fullbacks. You know, you got Napier, Scott, who I didn't see play, Don Clark, who I did see play, Mills, who I saw a bit of.
I made your lawns a lot, mate. That's how I got selected, didn't I?
And Kristen Cullen will help. You know, you got some absolute legends in the game. Like Napier played, I think, every game in the Invincibles tour in 1924, if I can remember rightly. I remember listening to the radio about that.
The wireless. So you think about all of those players. I mean, for you, Ted, I mean, has there been... Are you looking forward to later on when we get back on the show, and there's going to be a couple of positions, you haven't committed to that yet, but you're going to come back on, because, I mean, isn't that the great thing, that we're telling the stories of the past now? Well, sometimes that can be forgotten.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's part of the All Blacks team first understanding. The players know who have played there before, and they know it's their job to fill that jersey up more each time it gets moved on. So when Millsy played fullback, he was taking Christian Cullen's place, and he knew that he'd been a great player, and he wanted to emulate that. And Christian would have talked about Don Clark, different players, of course, but you know, he was a fantastic footballer, and so on and so forth.
And I remember it myself, because I was following on from Sir John Kirwan, and I knew that the expectations in the jersey, but all of the All Blacks talk about that. And so the front row is maybe not decided, but certainly debated. It's time now to move to the middle row. Let's go back to Nisbo and the team and look at some of the best locks to go around in the All Black jersey.
This week on New Zealand's Greatest 15, we're picking the locks. I'm Grant Nisbet, and I'm joined by veteran rugby journalist Phil Gifford, Sky Sport commentators Ricky Swinell and Ken Laban. OK, our short list for tight-head lock is Andy Hayden, Brodie Retallick, Robin Brooke and Brad Thorne. Quite some lineup. Phil?
This may be slightly controversial, but I'm going to pick Andy Hayden. I think that Andy Hayden was possibly the most street-smart All Black there's ever been. Andy would find a way to get the better of his opponent, and it's something he had in common, I think, even though they were very different people, with Colin Meads. And so for me, my pick is Andy Hayden.
Fair enough.
For me, it's Brodie Retallick. Work rate, skill set, core jobs.
My vote's going to go for Brodie. I just think he's the most dominant lock every time he's taken the field against any opponent during his time. So my vote's Brodie.
If you were able to somehow in their prime have Andy Hayden marking Brodie Retallick in a line-out, I would pay huge money to see that.
What a contest.
Because Andy Hayden, I think, would find some way to put Retallick off his stride, whether it was verbally, whether it was physically, whether it was timing, whatever it was. I just think Andy Hayden had one of the most astute rugby minds that we've ever seen in this country. Having said all of that, Brodie Retallick, as I said, he's an all-time great, no question, and I'd be very comfortable with him getting the public vote as well.
So we're agreed. Our contender for greatest All Black at tight head lock is Brodie Retallick.
Off goes Conrad Smith, pops it up, Brodie Retallick gets his first test try under the posts.
OK, guys, now let's have a look at loosehead lock. And the four we've listed are Colin Meads, Gary Wetton, Ian Jones and Sam Whitelock. Righto, team, what do you reckon about this four?
When people of my generation, they hear the name, that revered figure, he is somebody that I always wished that I got to see play.
Most of the stories, the colourful stories about Colin Meads involve violence. And the fact is, back in those days, the players had their own code, and the code often included literally punching somebody in the face. But there was so much more to the guy than that. As a player, I just don't think Colin Meads had any weaknesses. Hell, he even kicked a conversion once for King Country. So, for me, Colin Meads deserves every single bit of praise and almost semi-worship that he's had from the rugby public.
Did he intimidate the opposition, do you think?
Oh, hell yeah. I think so. What do you reckon, Ken?
Well, you know, all of the things that we say about him and all of the things that we admire about him are his courage, his physical presence and his leadership. You're drawn to him. You're drawn to his charisma, his humility, his modesty, which, of course, goes against the grain of a few corpses he's left lying on rugby fields around the world.
The day after he received his knighthood in Wellington,
Yeah.
I just happened to be leaving Wellington, and he was in the Cairo Club, and I saw him sitting there. But anyway, I said, so how did you enjoy yesterday? He said, well, not really my thing. And it sort of summed it up.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely summed it up.
My word.
But I don't think there's any further discussion.
No.
We're not looking for backups. We've decided, and this is hardly surprising, that our greatest ever loosehead lock is Colin Meads. Sir Colin Meads.
All right, from the front row to the locks, the challenge is laid for you to cast your vote on who you think would make the greatest 15 in the locking department. Pick from the current crop or players of old. The choice is absolutely yours. Cast your vote on the Sky Sport Facebook page, and we'll of course announce the winners next week.